A young woman stepped in to cover her uncle's taxi shift, completely unaware that her very first fare would be a reclusive millionaire in disguise. Rain misted across the windshield, turning New York's streetlights into glowing golden streaks. Kiva tightened her hold on the battered yellow cab's steering wheel, her hands just barely shaking. Her uncle's shift badge swung from the rearview mirror, spinning softly as she exhaled, trying to settle the anxious knot in her stomach. It was her first night as a cab driver, and every bump, blaring horn, and blinking crosswalk signal made her feel like the city itself was daring her to mess up. She muttered to herself, "I can handle sketches and oil paints, but fares and breaks in the rain? That's new." Just as she reached for her thermos of lukewarm coffee, the passenger door creaked open. A man slid into the back seat, moving with the quiet confidence of someone used to blending in. He wore a worn baseball cap pulled low, a dark hoodie, and jeans that had clearly seen better days. "You available?" he asked, not bothering to look up. Yeah," Key replied, startled. "Where to?" she asked. The man just shrugged, his voice steady but weary. "Just drive. I'll tell you when to turn." She shot him a quick glance in the mirror, then hesitantly started to meter. "All right. Buckle up, mystery man." As she pulled away from the curb, he settled in and stared out the window. Silence hung in the cab until he finally spoke. "Do you always drive like that?" he asked. "Like what?" Kiva replied, glancing at him in the mirror. "Like you're racing an ambulance to the ER. Are you planning to take me to the hospital?" Kiva joked. "Driving a cab at night is risky. Hope you're not a serial killer." Robert raised an eyebrow, half amused. "That's oddly specific." She shrugged, managing a crooked smile. "What can I say? My uncle's a cop. It rubs off." They stopped at a red light, the cab idling as pedestrians hurried by with umbrellas, turning inside out. Kiva tapped her fingers on the wheel to a tune only she knew. "Got a name, Speed Demon?" he asked. "Kiva," she answered. "And you?" He hesitated. "Robert." Another pause. "So, Kiva," he said, "what's a girl like you doing driving a cab this late? You don't look like the usual drivers." She sighed. "Just filling in for my uncle. He hurt his back and I need the cash." Robert nodded. "You in school?" "Was," she said. "Art major. Had to take a break, money's tight. Turns out the landlord doesn't accept sketches for rent." "Art, huh? You paint?" "Mostly," she said. "Acrylics, some mixed media. I like to capture the things people overlook." Robert turned slightly. "Like what?" She smiled softly. Empty subway benches, cracked windows, people waiting. He gave a quiet hum. "That's not what I expected. Most people say sunsets or dogs playing cards." She laughed. "I like beauty that sneaks up on you." "Sounds lonely," he said. The comment caught her off guard. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But sometimes lonely is honest." Robert didn't answer right away, turning back to the rain-streaked window. "Honest. That's rare these days." Kiva risked another look at him. There was something in his voice deliberate, thoughtful, not careless. Under the damp layers and guarded tone, she sensed a sadness she couldn't quite place. "You sound like someone who spent a lot of time with expensive therapists," she said. He smirked. "Not far off. And what do you do, Robert? Besides giving rookie cabbies a heart attack?" He shifted in his seat. "I used to run something big. Now I try to disappear." Kiva raised an eyebrow, but let it go. "What's your favorite music?" she asked. "Old jazz. The kind that makes you miss people you never met." She nodded. "Coltrane or Miles Davis?" "Miles," he said. "Always Miles." They drove through lower Manhattan, the city quieter than usual. In the mist, the streetlights reflected on the wet pavement like fallen stars. "Ever feel like the city's too big for one heart?" Kiva asked. "All the time," Robert replied. The silence that followed felt different, less like strangers, more like old friends. Kiva took a left without asking. "Where are we going?" Robert asked. "To my favorite place when I want to disappear," she said. "Seems like you need it more than I do tonight." Robert didn't object. The rain continued outside. Inside, Two unlikely companions traveled through the night, searching for something neither realized they'd already begun to find. The dashboard clock ticked past 1 in the morning, but neither Kiva nor Robert seemed eager for the ride to end. The cab rolled quietly through nearly empty streets, the rain now just a gentle tapping. The city, in its rare tranquility, revealed a softer, more vulnerable side, much like the man in the back seat. "Turn left here," Robert said suddenly. Kiva glanced in the mirror. "Got a destination now?" "Brooklyn Bridge." "You mind?" She grinned. "Only if you're planning to jump." He chuckled. "No promises." They crossed the bridge slowly, the tires humming over the damp steel. The Manhattan skyline curved behind them in a shimmering gold arc, and for a brief moment, both sat quietly, gazing out. "My uncle used to bring me here when I was a kid," Robert murmured. "He always said the city looked its best from far away." Kiva stayed silent, letting his words linger between them. After a while, Robert asked, "Could we stop for coffee? There's a place on 9th and Carmine if it's still around." "You mean Carmine's Cafe? That place is ancient." "That's the one." 10 minutes later, they were parked outside a weathered storefront with peeling red paint and a flickering neon sign that read "Open all night." Robert slipped inside and soon returned carrying 2 cups of coffee, handing one to Kiva through the window. "You didn't have to," she started. "I wanted to," he replied simply. She took a sip. "Wow, this tastes like 1995 in a cup." He laughed, leaning on the cab. "It's where my uncle taught me to play piano. Every Friday night. They had one in the back room." Kiva tilted her head. "You've mentioned your uncle before. He must have meant a lot to you." Robert looked away. He was more than important. He was the only one who really saw me, not just my last name. "You must have loved him a lot." "I still do," he said softly. "He died 6 years ago." Kiva watched him. "And you come back here to remember?" He nodded. "I guess I'm chasing ghosts." She didn't press further. Instead, she turned the key in the ignition. Where to next? Queens, 82nd Street. The ride took longer this time. As they passed through familiar neighborhoods and unfamiliar memories, Kiva realized this wasn't just a cab ride. It felt like she was tracing the map of someone's soul, revealed in slow, careful moments. They stopped in front of a quiet, tree-lined street with old brick houses. Robert stared at one in particular, its windows dark, porch light dim. "I grew up there," he said, "before everything changed." "You don't live there anymore?" He shook his head. "It hasn't been mine for a long time." Kiva glanced at him in the mirror, feeling something tug at her heart. "Robert, what are you running from?" He didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "What about you?" "Why art?" She smiled faintly. "Because it's the only thing that made sense when everything else felt overwhelming. Painting made the world quiet, like breathing in color." He studied her. "And what are you chasing?" "Freedom," she said. "A life that doesn't feel borrowed." Robert nodded slowly. "I think we're more alike than you realize." She turned to face him. "Maybe, but you still seem out of place." He managed a tired smile. "That's because I am." As the cab idled in front of his old home, the silence between them grew deeper, but it was a comfortable quiet, like a secret shared in the early morning mist. "Anywhere else?" she asked. He looked at her and said softly, "Would you drive me a little longer? I'll pay double." Kiva blinked serious. Robert nodded. "I just don't want to be alone tonight." She hesitated, then smiled. "Deal." As they pulled away, neither knew what was ahead, but both sensed something had changed. The cab glided through the calm streets of Queens, Kiva turning up the heat. The windows fogged, the air thick with the scent of old vinyl and fresh coffee. Robert sat in the back, watching familiar buildings blur by like memories he wasn't ready to face. "You sure you want to keep going?" she asked gently, glancing at him in the mirror. He didn't answer right away. Then, almost absent-mindedly, he said, "I'll pay double if you drive me for the rest of the night." Kiva's eyebrows rose. "You serious?" "I don't joke about money," he said, and for the first time, there was a weight in his voice, not arrogance, just fatigue. Kiva hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but it's not about the money." Robert looked at her, as if deciding whether to trust her with what he carried. "I haven't told anyone this in years," he said at last, his voice nearly lost in the hum of the engine. "But if I'm going to say it, it might as well be to someone who has no reason to lie to me." Kiva turned down the radio, giving him her full attention. "I was 15 when my mom got sick. He began ovarian cancer, the kind you don't find until it's too late. She was a music teacher, gentle, warm, everything soft you could imagine in a person. My father was the opposite, sharp, cold, always working, always closing deals. When she died, he buried himself in the business. Didn't even cry at her funeral." Kiva swallowed. "I'm sorry." Robert nodded slightly, his eyes distant. "He sent me to boarding school 2 weeks later. Said I needed structure. What I needed was my mother." Silence fell. He continued. "By the time I was 25, I was CEO of his company. He handed it over with a speech about legacy and strength and how emotions were for the weak. I made millions before I even knew what happiness was, and none of it ever felt like mine." Kiva listened, her hands tightening on the wheel. Robert exhaled, leaning his head against the window. "I started sneaking out at night, in disguise, walked the streets, talked to strangers. That's how I learned what life really looked like, people arguing in diners, musicians playing for change, kids laughing in alleyways. That felt real. But the more I saw, the less I felt I belonged." Kiva let his words settle before responding. "Do you think wealth can be a prison?" Robert turned to her, surprised. She smiled. "You took the words right out of my mouth." She gave a half smile. "I guess the prison has marble floors." Robert laughed softly, but it was a sad laugh, and locks the door from the inside. He finished. Kiva looked at him again. "So is tonight a jailbreak?" He didn't answer right away. "Maybe, or maybe it's the first night I stopped pretending I liked being trapped." They fell into silence again, but this time it was deeper, more intimate, the kind of quiet you share with someone who's heard your worst and hasn't walked away. Kiva turned down a narrow street lined with shuttered shops and dark windows. "You're not like anyone I've ever met, Robert. I'm not sure that's a compliment." "It is," she said. "You talk like someone who's been broken but keeps moving." Robert leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "What about you? Ever feel like life handed you the wrong script?" Kiva laughed softly. "Every day. I was supposed to be halfway through an artist residency in Florence right now. Instead, I'm driving my uncle's cab and wondering if I'll ever hold a paintbrush for something other than commission work again." "Why didn't you go?" "Couldn't afford it. Last month, I could barely buy groceries." "Dreams don't pay the rent." Robert looked at her, something tightening in his chest. "You're tougher than I ever was." She shrugged. "I'm good at pretending." He gave a faint smile. "You don't have to pretend. Not with me." Kiva turned down another street, the cab gliding beneath the amber glow of streetlights. Outside, the city slept on, but inside the cab, two strangers were starting to see each other in ways that words couldn't capture. "Thank you," Robert said softly. "For what?" "For not treating me like I'm broken." Kiva caught his eyes in the mirror. "You're not broken, Robert. You're just searching." He didn't reply, but for the first time in years, it felt like someone had finally said what he needed to hear. Maybe, just maybe, that was enough to keep moving forward. The sky had turned a deep, moody gray as Kiva turned onto 47th Street. Rain hammered the cab roof, relentless, turning the windows into blurred reflections of city lights. It was well past 2 a.m., but the city still pulsed with late-night life. Neon signs blinked over closing diners. Tired people shuffled home. Inside the cab, though, the silence had grown heavier, pressing on Kiva's chest like the air before a storm. Robert sat in the back, eyes distant. The warmth in his voice from earlier was gone. He fidgeted with his phone, distracted and more guarded. Kiva glanced at him in the mirror. "You okay back there?" He didn't answer at first. Then his phone lit up. She caught a glimpse of the screen as he picked it up. Incoming call, CEO office. Her grip on the wheel tightened, heart lurching. The call buzzed again. Robert sighed and silenced it, but Kiva had already seen enough. "CEO office?" she asked, trying to sound casual, though her voice trembled. That your boss? Robert froze for a moment too long. Not exactly, he muttered. Then what exactly, Robert? Her tone sharpened. Because unless CEO is your yoga instructor's nickname, you've got some explaining to do. He leaned forward, voice low. Kiva, it's not what you think. She pulled over, tires splashing through puddles. Then tell me what it is. Because I thought I was talking to someone who understood what it means to fight for something real. And now I find out you're what? A billionaire playing dress-up? It's not dress-up. He snapped, suddenly defensive. I wasn't trying to fool you. You didn't tell me the truth either. He leaned closer. I just wanted one night. One night to be someone else. Someone who didn't have everything decided for him. Someone who wasn't just a brand. Ah, she said bitterly. So the poor little rich guy decided to take a night off and play pretend with the cab girl. His face darkened. Don't do that. Do what? Be mad that you lied? That you made me feel like we were equals when you were hiding the whole time? I never lied to you, he insisted. I didn't use a fake name. I didn't manipulate anything. You let me believe you were someone else. He looked down, then back at her. You looked at me like I was just a person. Not a paycheck, not a headline. Just a man. That's all I wanted. Well, congratulations, she said, her voice breaking. You got what you wanted. And I got played. They stared at each other in the storm-lit car, the air brittle and charged. Then Kiva spoke again, softer but sharper. You want to be normal? Try giving up a scholarship because your mother can't afford your books. Try selling sketches on the street just to buy paint. Try waking up every day wondering if your dreams are too expensive to keep alive. I didn't mean to hurt you, Robert said quietly. I didn't know how to be honest without losing you. You never had me, Kiva replied, because you never let me see the real you. She pulled the handle and opened the passenger door from the front. Get out, Robert. Kiva, now. The rain rushed in, cold and sharp. Robert hesitated, then stepped out, water soaking his clothes instantly. He looked back at her one last time, his face unreadable in the darkness. I wasn't trying to escape you, he said. I was trying to escape everything else. Then he closed the door. Kiva watched him disappear into the rain, his figure swallowed by puddles, streetlights, and everything left unsaid. She sat for a long time, unmoving, the wipers sweeping across the windshield like tired arms. The meter kept running, but the ride was over. The next morning, the sun rose reluctantly, struggling through clouds that hadn't forgiven the night. Kiva sat on her apartment stoop, a mug of lukewarm instant coffee in her hands and a closed sketchbook in her lap. She hadn't slept. Robert's face haunted her not because of his wealth or his secret, but because, for a brief moment, he had felt real. She'd seen his pain, his vulnerability, and for the first time in a long while, she'd let someone in. Now the memory of that night tasted like betrayal. She got up and walked to the bookstore, where she worked part-time. The world kept turning. Customers came and went, and Kiva smiled when she had to, but everything felt muted, as if someone had turned down the volume on her life. At night, she painted, but the canvases stayed blank longer than before. Her hand trembled. Her colors seemed dull. She missed the laughter in the cab, the sound of his voice talking about music, the way he listened when she spoke of her dreams. Across the city, Robert sat at a table he didn't choose, in a restaurant he didn't want to be in, across from a woman he'd just met. She's from the Duval family. His father had said earlier, very successful, very polished. You'd make a good match. The woman smiled politely, listed her business ventures and country clubs, then asked, "So what do you do when you're not running an empire?" Robert forced a smile. "Apparently, I ride in cabs." She laughed, not catching the weight of his words. His father beamed from across the room. Robert felt like he was watching his life play out in a film he never auditioned for. That night, alone in his penthouse, he scrolled through his call history. Kiva's number was at the top, unanswered. He typed a message, deleted it, tried again, but couldn't send it. He walked to the window, looking out at city lights that once felt like victory and now just seemed distant. In the quiet, he whispered, "I'm sorry," but no one heard. In her apartment, Kiva stared at a blank canvas, and this time she didn't try to fill it. She just let it be, The gallery was quiet except for the soft shuffle of footsteps on polished floors and the occasional murmur of art lovers. Abstracts, portraits, and moody cityscapes lined the walls, each canvas holding a moment, a feeling, a truth. Robert hadn't planned to be there. He was on his way to a business lunch. Saw the modest sign for a local artist show, and on a whim he couldn't explain, stepped inside. He wandered through the space, hands in his coat pockets, until one painting stopped him in his tracks. It was a street at night. Rain fell in streaks of blue and gray. A yellow cab waited at the curb, headlights glowing in the mist. Inside, a man sat in the back seat, his face shadowed, posture weary, head turned to the rain-streaked window. The driver, a young woman, was caught glancing in the mirror, her eyes meeting his. The plaque read, "Stranger in the Rain, Mixed Media by Kiva Morgan." His breath caught. He stepped closer. Every brushstroke felt like a memory. The fog windows, the tension in the cab, the silence thick with things unsaid. It was that night their night captured in paint and feeling. She had remembered him. Robert stood for a long time before walking out into the sunlight and pulling out his phone. Kiva was stacking poetry books when the bell over the bookstore door jingled. She looked up and her chest tightened. Robert stood in the doorway, searching for her across the rows of books. He looked the same simple jacket, dark jeans, but there was something softer in his posture, less guarded. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he stepped forward. "I saw the painting," he said. Kiva blinked. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to see you," he answered. She crossed her arms. "So now the CEO has time for bookstores?" He winced, but didn't look away. "I deserve that." "Yeah," she said, her voice sharper than she meant. "You did." "I didn't come to excuse what I did," he said, "or who I am. I came because I saw that painting, and it felt like you'd taken a piece of my soul and put on a canvas." Kiva looked down, fingers tracing the spine of a book. "You were never just a fair to me." "I know." She looked at him. "Then why lie?" He stepped closer. "Because I was afraid. I spent so long hiding behind titles and expectations. I didn't know who I was without them. And when you saw me not as a name or a fortune or a job, but just as me, it terrified me. Because it was real." She didn't speak, her throat tight. "I was afraid of losing something that actually mattered." He went on. "But by hiding, I lost it anyway." He exhaled, his voice lower. "Kiva, I'm sorry. I never meant to make you feel like I was playing with your life. Meeting you wasn't a game. It was the first honest thing that's happened to me in years." She studied him for a long moment. "I don't care about your money," she said at last. "I never did. But I needed you to be real with me from the start." "I will be," he promised. "From now on." She nodded, but there was hesitation in her eyes. "I don't know if I can just jump back in," she said. "There's still this space between our worlds. I rent an apartment and take shifts to afford paint. You live in a world of tailored suits and mergers. How do we even meet in the middle?" Robert looked at her, really looked at her, and said gently, "I don't need a world of suits. I just need someone who sees me. And I think that's more than enough middle ground." Kiva didn't answer right away, but she didn't look away either. Their silence was heavy with unspoken feelings and anticipation. Suddenly, her manager's voice called from the back of the shop, asking for help with the inventory. "I should go back," she murmured. He nodded and took a step away. "I'll wait." She glanced at him, surprised. "As long as it takes," he replied. And for the first time since that rainy night, Kiva let herself believe he truly meant it. The study was hushed except for the ticking of an old clock. The atmosphere was charged with tension and quiet anger as Robert faced his father, holding an untouched glass of whiskey. His father sat behind a grand desk, posture rigid, each word carefully measured. "She isn't right for you, Robert," he said, his tone calm but unyielding. "This isn't about emotion. It's about logic. You know what's at risk." Robert stood firm. "What's at risk is your control," he answered. His father's gaze sharpened. "No. What's at risk is a legacy I built for this family, and you're endangering it for a passing fancy." "She's not a distraction," Robert replied, a hint of passion in his voice. "She's the only one who truly sees me. Do you think love pays dividends?" His father snapped. Does it protect assets, maintain board trust, uphold a billion-dollar empire? I don't care about the empire. Then you're a fool. Robert leaned in, jaw clenched. If you're telling me to choose between the money and her dash. I'm not telling you, his father interrupted. I'm demanding it. The silence that followed was cutting. Then, coldly, his father added, you will end this relationship. You will proceed with the Kensington arrangement, and the board will be assured of your loyalty. Robert stared back. And if I refuse? His father didn't flinch. You'll be cut off, removed from all assets. Your name will remain, but the fortune won't. Robert stood there, burdened by years of expectations and rehearsed roles. But then he remembered Kiva, her laughter in the taxi, her presence in the bookstore, the look in her eyes when she whispered, I just need the truth. He understood. He set the glass down, untouched. If losing all this, he said quietly, is the cost of keeping the only thing that's ever felt real, he met his father's eyes. Then it's the best deal I've ever made. His father's lips tightened, but Robert didn't wait for a response. He turned and left. That night, Robert packed a single suitcase. He walked away from the penthouse he'd never truly called home and moved into a small Brooklyn loft he bought years ago but never used. The apartment was simple one-bedroom, old wooden floors, peeling window frames, but it was his. That first night, he slept on a mattress on the floor, surrounded by boxes, without staff or assistants, and for the first time in years he felt free. The next morning, he made his own coffee, burned his toast, and smiled. Later, he sat at his desk and picked up a notepad, not a laptop, not a voice assistant. He started sketching something new, a life, a gallery he wanted to support, an art scholarship, a letter to Kiva. He didn't know what would happen when he gave it to her, but he was certain of one thing. Whatever came next, it would be his decision, and he would choose her every time. The community center walls were alive with color-finger-painted suns, messy portraits, wild acrylic jungles created by eager young hands. Kiva stood among it all, her smock stained with blue and yellow, smiling as children gathered around their canvases. It had been a year since that stormy night, a year since a stranger stepped into her cab and changed everything. Now, Kiva was no longer just getting by. She was painting, teaching, laughing, living. She had made her dream real, an after-school program for kids with nowhere else to go. Some had never even held a paintbrush before. Now, they left with paint on their cheeks and joy in their eyes. And Robert, he kept his promise to her and to himself. He left a world of power suits and luxury elevators. He started a foundation to fund arts education in underserved communities. He attended gallery openings in rolled-up sleeves and sneakers. People still whispered his name in boardrooms, but he no longer cared to be there. And every Saturday, without fail, he came to Kiva's class not as a sponsor, not as a hero, but simply as Robert. Just Robert. That evening, Kiva walked out of the center and saw a familiar sight at the curb. A yellow cab, just like the one her uncle used to drive. Old and dented, but freshly cleaned. Its windows gleamed in the golden sunset. The meter flashed, set to $0. Robert stood beside it, leaning on the door, holding 2 takeout coffees. He looked up and smiled, as he always did when she appeared, as if the world finally made sense. "Need a ride?" he asked. Kiva raised an eyebrow, laughing. "You bought a taxi?" "I borrowed one," he said. "Restored it. Your uncle let me surprise you." He opened the passenger door for her. She got in, shaking her head. "This feels familiar," she said softly. Robert slid into the driver's seat. "Yeah, but this time I get to drive." They cruised through quiet streets, windows down, music low. The city was softened by the evening, golden light painting the rooftops. They passed the bridge, the bookstore, the spot where they'd argued in the rain. When they reached the park where they'd first stopped that night, Robert pulled over and turned off the engine. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Robert turned to her, his voice steady and full. "That first ride, I didn't know what I was searching for." Kiva watched him quietly. "I thought I was running from something," he continued. "But when you looked at me in that rear-view mirror, for the first time I felt truly seen. Not as a Carson, not as a number. Just me." She took his hand. You've always been more than any name. He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it slowly. Inside was a simple, elegant, handcrafted ring. The band was polished silver, with a tiny emblem made from an old taximeter, a nod to where their story began. "I don't need a mansion," he said softly. "I don't need boardrooms, titles, or wealth." He took her hand. "I need this. I need you, Kiva Morgan. Will you ride with me through everything?" Her eyes filled with tears, but her smile was unwavering. "Only," she whispered, "if we're in the same car." Robert laughed, his heart overflowing. She added, "Because as long as we're together, even a taxi feels like home." He slipped the ring onto her finger. Then, beneath the glow of the old taxi sign he'd placed on the cab, they kissed not as strangers, not as people from separate worlds, but as two souls who had found the same journey. And this time, neither would ever travel alone again. So, under the soft light of a yellow taxi sign and a twilight sky, two hearts that once wandered in opposite directions finally found their way together, in a world often divided by status, wealth, and circumstance. Kiva and Robert showed that love doesn't care about titles, only truth. Sometimes, the most unexpected journey takes us exactly where we're meant to be. If this story moved you, made you smile, or reminded you of the beauty in honest connection, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories. We bring you real emotions, unforgettable journeys, and tales that heal the soul, one story at a time. Because sometimes, all it takes is one ride to change everything. Subscribe now and let your heart ride with us.